Okay, it's 11:30, and the meeting of the Justice, Health, and Welfare Committee will come to order. The purpose of this meeting is to consider the appointment of Richard E. Banks to the St. Louis County Board of Police Commissioners. The committee takes official notice of and admits into evidence all St. Louis County ordinances and resolutions. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gray.
Present.
Councilmember Clancy.
I think she's going to be a few minutes late.
Okay, Councilmember Days.
Here.
Councilmember Fitch.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Attorney Richard Banks, are you on the call?
Yes, ma'am, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If you'd like to introduce yourself to the committee, and then the committee will proceed to ask questions.
Okay, surely. My name is Richard Banks. I trust that as you said, that brief synopsis, not really a resume, is in front of you. I haven't prepared a resume per se in many, many decades, as I have not solicited or applied for any type of job. I've been in private practice for over 30 years in my own practice as an attorney. But there are some of the highlights of various accomplishments and things that I've done. I am a lifelong resident of the area. Have lived both in St. Louis City and St. Louis County all my life, with the exception of the time I was in school, both undergrad and well as law school. But other than that, I have been a resident of St. Louis City and County both. And as a concerned citizen, decided that when asked, I would step up to serve in what I consider to be a very important capacity on the police commission.
Is that all you want to say about your background?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Anything else you want to add?
No, ma'am, not specifically. I'm certainly willing to answer any questions about that.
Sure.
I could pine on for a while, but I don't want to put everybody to sleep this morning.
All right, thank you so much.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to advise the chair that I have a prior commitment. I may not be able to stay in the hearing the entire time. I wanted to just extend a hello and privilege to meet with you. Mr. Banks, I wish I could stay for the entire hearing. I may have to get off a bit early, but thank you for your willingness to serve.
Understood, and thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll try to have you ask questions pretty soon. I'm going to start with Councilman Fitch because he has a time constraint as well, and he's on the actual committee. So I'll start with Councilman Fitch.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Banks, for stepping up and be willing to be part of the police board. You're right; it is a very important work that we have in county government. So I just have a couple questions for you, and like Councilman Tracus, I'm time constrained as well, so I only have about 30 minutes. But what I wanted to start with is, can you tell us how you came about? Did someone come to you and ask you to apply for this police board position? How did this come about?
Sure, and it's good to see you, Councilman Fish. I don't. You probably don't remember, but you and I worked together a number of years ago in a case that I had of police pursuit, and you were an expert for us. And
absolutely, I do remember that well. Not too far from your neighborhood.
Not far at all. You did a fantastic job on that, and I think we had a very good outcome on that for everybody concerned. I was approached by a gentleman by the name of Mike Holmes, who I think is an advisor of sorts to the, and Mr. Holmes approached and asked if I would have any interest in serving in this capacity. And that's how the conversation started. And from there, I met with Dr. Page, and we discussed some of the ins and outs of what's involved with it. And here we are.
Okay. And my reception was bad. Did you say somebody by the name of Mike Holmes is the one that approached you?
Yeah, Michael Holmes. He's an advisor to Dr. Page, and he's the one who first approached and asked if I had any interest in serving this capacity.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. One of the other things that I think is important to point out, in Mr. Banks, you're absolutely well qualified. Glad to see you step up and want to be part of the police board. However, one of the criticisms from the public of the police board has been that the police board doesn't generally represent the community. And there's been a push for other voices to be heard on the police board. So now we are going to have 4 attorneys and 1 college professor on the police board. Do you have, when you get approached with questions like this, how will you handle that to show that you are in fact representing everyone in the community?
It's a good question, and it was certainly, in all candor, one of the first questions that I had too, when I looked at the members who are currently serving, that we were sort of top heavy with lawyers. That I don't know how people feel about that. I think that the representation comes from your life experiences. I think you want someone who has been part of this community all of his life, who, for lack of better terms, in touch with members of the community through various organizations and so forth. I have been through all my professional career, but I also think that there's some critical thinking that is involved with this that I think for most attorneys goes hand in hand with what we do. I think this is a situation, as with some of my other experiences, that you're called upon to review facts, to review the facts independently, dispassionately, and to have facts lead you to conclusions void of any other outside influences, but specifically what the facts in front of you mean. And most of us who practice, I think we've been trained that way, to be led only by the facts. And I hope that I bring that sort of expertise to the position, being independent and actually listening to everything that's in front of me, whether it's a disciplinary matter or whether it's a promotional matter. All those type of issues, I think, are a skill set that lend themselves to what we do in terms of practicing law.
Okay, thank you. My last question is, if you had a chance to read the duties, responsibilities in the county charter for the Board of Police Commissioners, if you had that opportunity, I know it's been pretty quick.
I did review that, yes, sir.
So I think the most important line in there, and if I get it pretty close to, maybe I'll paraphrase here, is it says the Board of Police Commissioners shall be in charge of the Department of Police. To me, that's pretty clear who runs the police department, and that's you and your other 4 members of your police board. You will get pressured from members of this council, members from outside of the council, members of the county executive staff, for example, to do what they want to do. How will you be able to uphold that independence that you're given by the people of St. Louis County?
Well, I agree with you. I think that the first line of that charter we talked about is that you're a civilian oversight and that you are supposed to remain independent of political influence. And I would think that would mean influence from the board, from the executive branch, as well as from different factions within the police community. I think that's the charge that comes with the job. I think that's what makes it kind of a thankless job, because honestly, someone's going to be mad at you. You're going to make a decision that one of those one of those factors are not going to be happy with the decision that you made. And I guess, but because of the high rate of pay, that's the only thing that you risk with the job. But I think the fact that I've been asked, and I'm not a political operative by any stretch, I think puts me there as independent. And I realize that the press could be mad at you, the people could be mad at you, the police board could be mad at you, the county executive be mad at you, but that you have to follow, I think, what your charge is, and your charge is to be independent and to review each and every matter that comes before you independently, along with the other 4 members of the commission. And I don't know each of them. I worked with Judge Price in the past when he served on the Supreme Court, and I worked with him as a Supreme Court Advisory Committee member for 12 years. But I do, I trust that the other appointees have the same position, that they work independently, and understanding that this is not a position where you're going to make everyone happy.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you on the police board and doing what we can do to help you and the police department be successful. So thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to go first.
Thank you.
Thank you again. I appreciate you're remembering our working together back.
Absolutely.
Councilman Tracus, did you have one question that a major question that you would like to go ahead and ask?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Again, Mr. Banks, pleasure to meet you, sir. And again, thank you for your willingness to serve. The only question I have, and there may be 1 or 2 follow-ups, but I just would like to get your position or opinion on police nullification. And if you want me to explain what that means, I'm happy to do it, at least as far as I understand it.
Tell me your understanding, please.
Well, I guess what I mean by that is this idea that the more the law enforcement is subjected to criticism, subjected to prosecution, rightly or wrongly, my point is at some point we have what's called police nullification, and that is police departments, not necessarily here in St. Louis County, but in other cities, essentially standing down, not willing to engage, not doing routine procedures that they're trained to do with respect to law enforcement because of a fear of unfair prosecution or unfair criticism. Hence the nullification of the effectiveness of law enforcement.
Okay. And your question is my thought on?
Just your thought on that theory, that concept.
Well,
do you think it exists? Do you think it's really not important? I'm just curious.
Obviously, I think it's important. I think that I'm not a supporter of it. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. As the case with all professionals, whether we're talking police officers or physicians or attorneys, there's always criticism as to how they perform their job, how they perform their duties. It doesn't prevent or nullify the individuals from performing that job. And the vast majority of all those professions, including police officers, in my opinion, are good people who are doing a good job. I think that the officers that step out of those bounds are few, and I think that the officers that are doing a good job and who are committed to the community and serving the community are going to do so regardless of criticism.
Okay.
I think they believe in their jobs. as well as they should. And so, no, I don't think that's the case. And I think that one of the misconceptions that some people have is that because people complain about the police in general, that therefore they want to see this standing down of the police. I don't think anything could be further from the truth. I think people who are, especially minority communities, who are affected more significantly by crime than our other communities, want just the opposite. I think they want more. They want more and better police, but more police present within our communities, as opposed to standing down.
Well, thank you. You've answered my question. I appreciate it very much. And again, I look forward to working with you going forward. Thank you so much for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have.
And I might add, for those of you who may not hear the entire discussion, I'm sure that arrangements can be made for you to meet with Mr. Banks at another time. Next on the committee would be Councilwoman Days. You have any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you also, Mr. Banks, for putting yourself forward here for this board. I do have several questions, and probably they're more poignant than maybe some of the others. So I am looking here. I believe you live in my district. I didn't realize that. Or do you still live here, or are you your office is just in the city? Is that what it is?
My office is downtown, but I do in fact live in your district.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Good to meet you.
Good to see you.
What do you feel is the basic role of the commissioners? What do you feel is paramount in your position there, and how do you go about doing that?
Well, as we discussed with Councilman Fitch, the charter, I think, is very clear in that it says this is a civilian oversight board of 5 members of the community whose job it is to oversee the police department. And I think that means all aspects, as it says, it uses the words control and supervision of the police department. Equally important, it also highlights that this should be done so independent of political influence. And I think that's the role I see of the civilian oversight board and the 5 members who sit there.
So you basically see the commission as a civilian review board, if you will. Is that the way you see it?
Yes, ma'am. And I got that from the charter itself.
Okay, and I recognize that we have had some instances, future not where you are concerned, but we did not feel that was the way the commission was moving. We've had several issues where people have come forward, they've been dismissed, those people are now gone, and so we're hoping that with a new board, and of course you're sitting on that board, would lend some credence to having some independence. That might be a little difficult in that you are a political appointee. So it's going to be a balance in how you do that. Are you familiar with the Ethical Society of Police?
I am.
And what is your have you ever had a relationship with anyone from ESOP?
I have not had a relationship. I'm aware of the existence of the African American Officers Association. And I know only what I read in the papers.
Oh, okay. Okay. We have had, I guess, initially with the new chief coming on, this council had a meeting with her, and we were discussing systemic racism within the police department. And she immediately told us that did not exist in the St. Louis County Police Department. And many of us were shocked by that, because we do know that at some point there are right now 3 lawsuits asserting that. And so I need to know what is your position on well, not necessarily racism, period, but systemic racism that we sometimes face. You look at that. You're in law, a lawyer, and so I'm sure you've had some of that as well. So, talk a little bit about your feelings on systemic racism, please.
Sure. Well, I think it's unfortunate, the comment, first of all. Certainly, systemic racism exists, and I've had discussions about this offline with in other contexts. And my opinion is a simple one: is that systematic racism exists in every organization that's run by humans. Because to me, it's just it's a byproduct of implicit bias that we all have. Most of us have gone through various studies and so forth of implicit bias, and it's inherent with all of us. Our job is to identify it and know it's there, recognize it, and then take steps to battle against it. But you certainly can't ignore it. It's certainly it's prevalent in every system, whether you're talking about government, the law, policing, sports, you name it. If there's an entity that's run by humans, there is systematic racism. But it doesn't mean that you can throw your hands up and say there's nothing you can do about it. There certainly are things you can do about it to address it. But
Okay.
the first thing is recognizing that it does exist.
That's kind of been my attitude. You have to acknowledge, first of all, that it does exist. So, have you ever had an opportunity to work with our counselors or with anybody with St. Louis County in terms of lawsuits or filing lawsuits or anything of that nature? I know you talked earlier with Councilman Fitch about, I guess he was your expert witness on something. So, was that on behalf of the county or what?
Well, it was a case involving one of the municipalities. It was a police pursuit case where a young mother lost her life, unfortunately, as a result of a pursuit from a municipality. I guess I can name the municipality. It was Upland Park, and that was, I think, I want to say about 5 years ago. After a while, the lawsuits all blend together. I want to say it was about 5, maybe 6 years ago. And yes, at the time, Chief Fitch was our expert witness who sort of told us in general, what police pursuit guidelines should be, and what guidelines should be followed, and how, in his opinion, this particular municipality actions were inconsistent with what a prudent police department would do and would implement for pursuit matters. But although I don't do criminal defense work, so most of my work is civil, I still interact quite a bit, particularly in auto type things where you have police officer involvement. So I've had officers who have testified for me in the past, about various reconstruction type things in terms of accidents and how they occurred and so forth. But that's the only interaction I had, and that was the only direct lawsuit that I can recall that dealt specifically with the police department. And I said it wasn't St. Louis County; it was one of the municipalities.
Okay, so we often have sought outside counsel for some of the issues that we have in St. Louis County. Have you ever applied for any of that work?
No, ma'am, I have not.
Okay, and my last question has to deal with Senate Bill 5. I'm not sure if you are familiar with Senate Bill 5. I believe the implementation is January, and that might have some significant impact on our police department. Are you familiar with that legislation?
I am not, ma'am. I'd have to get up to speed on that.
Okay, well, when you do, then we can talk about it, because it may have some serious ramifications on our resources as a police department, and so that's something that we're going to have to think about a little later. But thank you so kindly. Appreciate your responses here, and looking forward to working with you.
Oh, thank you. I would add that, and when I start thinking about police involvement, I actually have represented a few police officers in like work-related injuries, like workers' comp. So I have represented a few police officers in the past.
Okay, so that's the personal injury part of your practice?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else on the committee? I think it would be Lisa.
Yes.
On the call.
Yes, I do have a question. It is very good to meet you, Mr. Banks. I appreciate you stepping up for this important commission. My question is about, I would like to know if you have any familiarity with some of the reports that have come out in the past couple of years or so that have a lot of implications for policing policy. The reports specifically, I'd like to know if you're familiar with, include the Ferguson Commission report, President Obama's 21st Century Policing Task Force work, and then also in 2015, the Department of Justice did conduct, I'm not sure technically what the right term is, a review of, I believe, the St. Louis County Police Department in the wake of the killing of Michael Brown. Are you familiar with any of those bodies of work?
Yes, I am. And when it came out, when the Ferguson report came out, I did read that. I remember some of the recommendations that were made and so forth in that, and also the one from the Justice Department.
Good. I bring those up because I think that we have had a lot of really great ideas and policy suggestions that have come out of that work and others. And I'm concerned that too often those reports and others just end up sitting on a shelf and don't actually get the time and attention they deserve when it comes to implementing policy. The Ferguson Commission report particularly, I think, is powerful because it includes traditional subject matter experts as well as the voices of nearly 1,000 community members. So certainly it's been, 5 years since that report was finalized. There is things that have been updated since then, but I still think it's important, and I would encourage the Police Commission and others who are making policy for the police department to review that. And then my final question is, what do you see are the biggest priorities right now in the St. Louis County Police Department? And how will you tackle those priorities in your role as a commissioner?
Well, I'd like to learn more from the inside. Obviously, my understanding is just from someone who reads the newspaper and follows stories that way. And as we all know, there is more than that part of the story that's there. So I'd like to understand more. But if you ask me in general that question, I think that, as was brought up earlier, the racism or the perception of racism within the department is probably one of the key issues that could be addressed. And again, it's not a situation that can be solved in just 5 easy steps. But I think it certainly, and it speaks to what you were saying earlier in terms of implementation of some of the plans that we were presented with earlier. But I think for sure there needs to be that communication level where not only civilians but also officers, African American officers, think that they have a stake in the outcome, that their concerns are being addressed, the community concerns are being addressed, and that there's a certain amount of fairness and equity that exists in the treatment of police officers and in their interactions with the community. I think that's very important.
Thank you. I appreciate you addressing both of those items, and that is all my questions for now, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other council members have questions?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Banks, for stepping up and being part of this great endeavor of our police department. A couple things I'd like to ask you. As you said before, the pay is not very good for this job. The time is, you'll wish you had your time back many times. So why do you want to be on this police board?
Well, I think it's an important job, and I agree with you that it is time. I anticipate it being time consuming. For the last 12 years, I served on the Supreme Court Advisory Committee for the Missouri Bar, and our job was oversight of 25,000 lawyers in the state of Missouri, dealing with disciplinary matters from slaps on the wrist to disbarment. Very, very time consuming and but very, very important work. And I think that it's key that when you have when you're regulating, whether it be lawyers or whether it be the police department, it's key that you have people who are willing to look at facts and give you a fair assessment of what they believe happened. It's not great work, the pay sucks, and as I said earlier, a lot of people are going to be upset with you because you didn't necessarily see things the way they wanted you to see them. But as a person in this community, and it's been all my life in this community, I just think it's very, very important work. When I was, if I be candid, when I was first approached about it, I asked several people whose opinion I trust. Many of them said, "Why do you want to do that? You don't need to do that. It's time consuming. It's important work, but that's not something that you necessarily need to do. It certainly doesn't help your career any at this point. Why would you want to do that?" But there were equally people who said that this is a key and important job always, but particularly in this time in history, this particular point, it's very, very important. I was raised by a school teacher who told me that the world is run by people who show up. So I've always had that in mind, that sometimes you have to take on not the easiest road, but the more important job to make sure that it gets done, and someone has to do it.
Sure. What would you say is your most valuable quality or experience you think you can bring to the board?
Well, I lean on that 12 years I spent overseeing disciplinary actions for lawyers in the state of Missouri, because in a way they're parallel. You can imagine that we have every complaint that one could think of against an attorney, from not returning phone calls to running off with all the money and everything in between. And you had to look at those cases on kind of a dispassionate route. I'm also a hearing officer, where I hear 2 or 3 cases a year of these disciplinary matters. So I think that you sort of have to remain objective and thoughtful and sympathetic, because I think oftentimes there's a human element that goes into the decisions that you have to factor in as well. And I coming from a background of running your own business, you understand all the pressures that go into running your own business.
Right.
But I think that that wealth of experience that I bring from there to the police board, I think is important.
Okay. And finally, do you have any goals or agendas that you would like to accomplish by being on the?
Well, I would like to say that as a valued member with the other 4 members, that I quickly become someone who they can rely upon, whose opinions they trust, and be a person on there that all different, whoever's mad at you, they will at least say, I know he gave it a fair shake. Yeah, I know he looked at it and this is how he evaluated the facts that were presented to him, and he did so fairly. I don't necessarily agree with him, but I think I understand his thought process and the way he did. I think that's the most you can ask.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for serving.
Oh, sure, thank you.
Any other questions? I do have a.
Madam Chair, I will yield to you, or I don't want to take anyone else's time, but I do have a couple of other questions after everyone has had an opportunity, if you don't mind.
Okay, I think I heard Councilwoman Dunaway.
So I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you so much for your willingness to serve, and may the force be with you.
Oh, thank you. I'll need it.
Yes, I kind of to piggyback on Councilman Fitch's earlier question or statement. I have also concern and questioned the previous candidates or recommendations for this board. And my question is always, not that there's, I won't use the word pressure from outside people or staff. I don't think there will be pressure from them, but in the past, when I first got on the board, I spoke with the about 3 members of the commission and asked them, were they independent? Did they, when something was brought to their attention or a new, I'll just use the word rule, needed to be implemented, did they work independently to decide to determine what is the best path? And I was told by at least 3, maybe more of those members that they always, almost 100% would acquiesce to the will or the pleasure of the chief. And therefore, because the chief knows better than they do, that was what they would tell me. And I did, I don't know if I want to ask you if you're going to be more independent of the chief, or just to make the statement that I hope that you will be, and that you make decisions based on the facts put before you and your knowledge, and then in communication with the other commissioners, and not just because you think that the chief knows more than anyone else about, of course, policing practices. And you can respond to that if you think you need to.
Well, it's good input. I appreciate that, and I do like that input. I think that's important. And again, I go back to the charter, and unless I'm misreading it, it says that basically the chief works for us. So I don't know that you could, in good faith, if you are doing your job, take solely the word of whoever the chief is as to what he or she thinks as being the rule.
Right. Secondly, yes, the charter does indicate as Councilman Finch mentioned earlier, about the role of the Board of Commissioners. However, I've always disagreed with that premise. I think it's silent as to what the role is of the legislative body, which are the council members, and so therefore it's left to interpretation. This is, again, just at this point, it's just my opinion. I'm just making a statement as was made earlier. And you can disagree or agree. I'm not asking you a question. It's just my opinion. And I believe that the commission is supervisory in nature, and they speak onto the day-to-day operations of the police department. Of course, I'm in the minority, but so it will remain as it is at this point, because we don't have enough people who are willing to see it any different or make any changes. But and I explain it as every department has a department head, a director, and we do not interfere with the supervisory nature of those directors, but we can legislate what happens to the extent that we are allowed by law, what happens in every department, but we cannot do that for the police department. And I don't think that was the intent when the charter was written. It just really, it doesn't make sense to me because we talk about all the time the separations of power and why can't we, why aren't we able to legislate certain things? So that's just my 2 cents because that was brought up earlier. I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss anything. And yes, as Councilwoman Days mentioned, the actions of a civilian review board are that people consider you as a civilian review board is also something that the community does not agree. A lot of people in the community don't agree with, and we've tried to address that about a year and a half ago. With the compromise, but we had some pushback and we haven't been able to do anything with an actual civilian review board in concert with the police commission board. But that's just also another statement, just to give you some insight and input into what the community thinks about. Didn't mean to do that. And the fact that there's a lot of distrust. It was mentioned earlier that, there will be 3 attorneys, I think, and which is why a lot of people think that a civilian, literally a civilian person review board is, and I'm not saying that I agree or disagree. I think there's some credence to both. I don't think they both have a place. And I'm not suggesting that one should be placed the other. I think they should both be in place and work together. So those are my comments. I hope I didn't leave anything off. And if you'd like to respond, you can. If not, I think Councilwoman Days has questions, unless you'd like to say anything else.
No,
Attorney.
I'll let my councilwoman ask me a question.
Sure. Go right ahead, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Well, it really dovetailed in what Councilwoman Clancy was indicating about the Ferguson report and DOJ. And when you look at Senate Bill 5 is a direct response to the consent decree from the Department of Justice. And that's why I brought that up, because there are some things that are going to be happening January 1 with that particular legislation. And that's why I think you need to familiarize yourself with that. The other thing is that we lost you mentioned the independence, and of course we lost, I thought, a very good commissioner in Dr. Punch, because I believe of that a very same thing. The independence was not there before the commission. We had some people to come in and decide what the role of some of our police officers would be in some of the precincts, and I think that was a bit much, without even, because I understand at the time that the commission was not aware that was going to even happen. So I'm just saying that to you, that you may think that you are somewhat independent, and you may be somewhat independent, but I think that at some point you're going to have to recognize that you are a political appointee, and there are going to be some things that are required. So if you can hang on to that independence, that would be fantastic for me, at least, and I'm pretty sure some of the others as well. But those were just the last 2 comments that I had, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I do have a follow-up.
Yes.
Mr. Banks, and just kind of jumping off of what Councilwoman Days said, is yes, you do get a 3-year hard term. And the purpose for that is so you have that independence. So you can get that call from the county executive who says, I want you to do this. Well, guess what? You got 3 years. He can't just throw you out. And you have staggered terms for that reason. So you all can't be wiped out at one time unless the system is manipulated, which we have seen in the past, where county executives have allowed commissioners' term to expire. And if you don't do what the county executive wants, you get that threat. Guess what? You're going to be out the door unless you do what I want, because your term's expired. I can replace you tomorrow. So it is good going in your perspective, that you have a 3-year hard term, that the county executive or any of us can't come to you and say, you need to do this or else. That is the purpose behind the charter giving you that 3-year hard term. So I hope you enjoy that independence and use it to your benefit.
Good point. Good point.
Thank you, Councilman Fitch. Anyone else have questions?
Committee of the whole, committee of the half.
No other questions? Any final words, Attorney Banks, before we adjourn our meeting?
I thank everybody. I was thanking everybody for the time. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And we as well appreciate your willingness to serve. And,
Madam Chair, I do have a motion.
One moment. See, you made me forget what I was going to say.
I think you're off the motion, weren't you?
Not yet. I was going to go ahead though. I was going to ask for public comments.
Yes, Madam Chair, we don't have any public comments today.
Okay. And I think that I was going to say something else, but I don't remember what it was. Go ahead, Councilman Fitch. I will entertain your motion. Your motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that this committee recommend approval of Mr. Banks to the entire council.
I would second that motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The motion has been called and seconded. All in favor? Or we don't have to have a roll. We don't have a roll call, correct? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No opposed? So we will make a recommendation, I believe, this evening. That's up to the chair of the council. But I appreciate everyone coming today and listening to the words of the appointee or future appointee. And I will ask one more time, any other comments or questions prior to a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I would second that motion as well, Madam Chair.
Thank you both. And with that, we are adjourned. See you all a little later today.
Good luck, Mr. Banks.
Thank you very much.
Thank
all.
you.
Good luck to you.